And what strategies are you recommending in the book? You don't have to give us all of them because I hope people will pick up the book, but what are some strategies for listeners to this podcast if they want to start doing something tomorrow to help their learners develop this growth mindset?
Yeah. So there a couple of things. One is make sure that kids can actually see what they're aiming at. Like you mentioned in the introduction, kids often don't know what they're actually supposed to learn. And it's like getting a little puzzle piece at a time. Every day you show up to class, but you've never seen the box. You don't know what it's supposed to look like when you're done, right? And so helping kids actually see what it is they're aiming at will give them the opportunity to start to take some shots at it, right? And at that target. So that's really the first thing. And there's, in my opinion, the single best way to do that is to provide models of proficiency. In other words, if I'm teaching a music class, what's the first thing that I do when I'm teaching a new section of music? I have them listen to that section of music. If I'm in a welding class, I help kids they have a little model weld that they take into the welding booth before they start to practice it. Same thing in a language arts class or a math class. If they have models of what proficient work looks like, as Rick Stiggins advocates, if they can see the target, they can hit the target, right? And so that's one strategy. The other would be, and that's not necessarily anything new in terms of pedagogy. However, I think we kind of give short shrift to that. We write the objective on the board and think that's sufficient, and it's really not. That doesn't illuminate the target for kids. So that's one thing that we can do. Another thing that I would highly recommend for those teachers who are game and really want to try to change these mindsets that we're talking about is help their students track their own progress, right? Help them track their own progress. And that incremental progress that they can start to track and then see that progression, that lends itself to just some really, really powerful metacognitive conversations and reflections. So
I agree wholeheartedly. Yes, I think it's important that objectives be posted and then discussed at the end of a period. Did we meet our objective? Yes or no? Why or why not? What are we going to do next? And in fact, that reminds me of an episode with Maureen Freiburn, where we talk about creating lesson objectives and success criteria. But to your point, we need to do more. And I want to highlight what you were saying at and what I'm about to get to, which is this idea of success criteria. So, yes, how can we put up exemplars of best practice?
yeah,
What does the project need to look like at the end? Have an actual example. Aaron, I sometimes tell teachers if they're going to do certain projects again or certain assignments again, year in and year out, to save different examples of what it is that students are supposed to accomplish. Yes, we want to see the best and what exactly we want our students to create, but I also suggest they keep a few samples of less than ideal work to model where certain projects and where the people who created them can continue to grow. Of course, no names, and that's why you want to use projects from years past and not from the current year if you have them. Uh, but I think another way to really demonstrate to students what they need to do, and this is tied to that success criteria, is to develop performance rubrics along with showing the exemplar. What are your thoughts on performance rubrics?
yeah. So I have thoughts on that. I think about this stuff all the time, and I work with teachers all the time and coach teams. And what I talk to them about, what I encourage, because time is so limited for teachers and teacher teams, when I'm helping them do some standards work and really try to break down their standards, deconstruct them, and get clear about what proficiency actually looks like, because that's our first step. We have to know what proficiency looks like before we can communicate that with our students, right? So what I'll often do, and this probably sounds counterintuitive, but what I'll do is I'll say, okay, let's look at the standard. Let's talk about what we think the essence of the standard actually is, and then let's either pull some models from previous student work, like you're talking about, and develop some level of inter-rater reliability, or in other words, that we all kind of see quality work the same way. And sometimes we'll sit down and just create it. We'll say, okay, pretend like we're our 4th graders or our 11th graders or whatever, and let's produce some work that we would expect that we consider to be proficient, right? And we start with the model or the exemplar first. And then what I tell them is I say, okay, now that we have a version 1.0, and let's put version 1.0 draft and the date at the top. Okay, meaning we can change this as we go forward and we learn more. But we have this done. Done is better than perfect right now. And we're going to go the ready, fire, aim approach. And once we've got those models in place, then what I say to them is I say, okay, now why is this quality? Why is this quality? And they'll say, well, because it does this, it does this, it does this, it does this. And I say, great. You just wrote the beginnings of a rubric, right?